The wind cut through the empty plains like a blade that morning, sharp and merciless. It carried the scent of dust, frost, and distant wood smoke, remnants of a land that had given up on gentleness long ago. The woman stood at the edge of the ranch road, her thin shawl wrapped tight around her shoulders, her boots caked with mud and desperation. The small sack she carried was light, too light. Inside were a few trinkets, a silver locket that no longer shone, and a crumpled piece of paper bearing her name and the word foreclosure stamped in red ink. Her name was Clara May, though out here, names didn't carry much weight. The bank had sent men to her door last week, polite, expressionless men who spoke of debt and signatures. They told her she had until the end of the month to pay what she owed or lose everything her late husband had built. The trouble was, her husband had left her with little more than a patched-up roof and a stubborn horse that barely stood. Now, after walking half a day, she reached the ranch that people in town whispered about, the largest spread for miles, owned by a man named Samuel Briggs. Some said he was cold, others that he had once been kind until war and loss hollowed him out. All Clara knew was that he had money, and maybe, mercy. When she saw the outline of his barn through the pale morning light, she stopped. Her fingers trembled around the sack's handle. She rehearsed what she'd say. Please, sir. Just $1. Take the land, and I'll go quietly. The words tasted bitter. It wasn't pride that kept her from crying, it was the exhaustion of having done so too many nights already. The ranch yard was still. A few chickens scratched near the water trough, and a chestnut horse stamped its hooves by the corral. Then she saw him. Samuel Briggs emerged from the barn, sleeves rolled up, straw clinging to his shirt. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and his movements carried the easy precision of someone who'd lived his life working with his hands. A wide-brimmed hat shadowed his face, but his voice when he spoke was even and low. "Morning," he said. "You lost." Clara swallowed, her throat dry. "No, sir. I came to speak with you. I won't take much of your time." He wiped his hands on a rag, studied her quietly, then nodded toward the porch. "All right then. Come on." The porch creaked beneath her boots as she followed. Up close, he looked older than she'd imagined, not old in years, but in the way that grief leaves its marks. His eyes were gray-blue, the color of the sky before a storm. He gestured for her to sit. "You're from the May place, aren't you? Down by Cotton Creek." Her heart gave a small lurch. "I was. Till next week." He leaned against the railing, crossing his arms. "Bank coming for it?" She nodded. The silence that followed was heavy enough to press on her chest. Finally, she took the wrinkled paper from her sack and placed it on the table. "They said I owe $87. I don't have it. I can't earn it, and if I lose the house, I'll have nowhere to go. So I thought." Her voice broke, but she forced the rest out. "I thought maybe you could buy it. Not for what it's worth, but just $1. Enough to make it official before the bank men come. Please, do it quick." Samuel didn't speak. He looked at her the way a man looks at a horizon he can't quite read. His jaw tightened slightly. "You came all the way here to sell your land for $1. "Yes, sir," she said softly. "I can't keep it, and I'd rather someone like you had it than see the bank take it for nothing." He studied the creases in the paper, then her face. "You got anyone to help you?" "No one left," she whispered. "My husband died last winter. The fever took him fast. Neighbors have their own troubles." He exhaled slowly, his breath fogging in the cold air. "You eat today." Her lips parted, but she hesitated. Lying would have been easier, but the truth hung heavy. "No." He nodded once, turned, and disappeared into the house. For a moment, she thought he was dismissing her. Maybe he'd fetch his wallet, hand her a coin, and send her on her way. Maybe he'd laugh at the absurdity of it, a woman selling her life's work for $1. When he came back, he held a mug of steaming coffee and a small plate of cornbread. He set them in front of her without a word. Clara's eyes filled with tears she tried to hide as she took the plate. The warmth seeped through her fingers, the first she'd felt in days. Samuel sat across from her, silent while she ate. The wind whispered through the dry grass, and somewhere, a windmill creaked. When she finally finished, she set the mug down and wiped her mouth. "Thank you, Mr. Briggs. I'll be on my way once we sign." He studied her for a long time. "I'll pay you that $1, he said at last. "But I won't take your land." She blinked. "Sir." He leaned forward, voice steady. "I'll pay it to you because that's what you came for. But you're not selling me anything. You're keeping your home." That night, the wind softened. The storm that had threatened all day broke only into a gentle rain, drumming faintly against the tin roof of the farmhouse. Inside, Clara sat by the hearth, a thin wool blanket around her shoulders, staring into the flickering orange glow of the fire. Her shawl hung near the door, drying, and her small sack, her whole life's worth of belongings, rested by her boots. For the first time in weeks, her stomach wasn't empty. Samuel Briggs sat across the room, cleaning his rifle with slow, methodical care. The light from the fire caught the angles of his face, the deep lines that spoke of hard years. He hadn't said much since supper, and she hadn't expected him to. He was the kind of man who measured his words like they cost him something to speak. Still, she couldn't stop glancing at him, wondering what kind of person just gave something like that away. It wasn't only her land, it was her chance to keep the last piece of her husband's memory, the patch of earth they'd dreamed would grow wheat one day instead of weeds. "I don't understand you," she said at last, her voice quiet but steady. Samuel looked up from his work. "How's that?" She hesitated, turning her hands in her lap. "You said you'd pay the bank. You barely know me. There's nothing I can give you in return." He went back to polishing the barrel. "Didn't ask for anything. That's what I don't understand," she whispered. "Men don't help without wanting something back. Not out here." The fire popped, sending a tiny spark into the air. Samuel didn't answer right away. When he did, his tone was low and even. "Maybe I'm not like most men out here." Clara studied him carefully. "Then why did it?" He set the rifle down and leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "You ever been so far down you forget what kindness feels like?" Her eyes flickered up to meet his, and for a moment, neither of them looked away. "I have," he said. "Years ago, my wife and boy got sick during the winter. I was broke, stuck on a piece of land smaller than yours. A stranger rode in one morning, man I'd never met. Paid the doctor, left a sack of flour by the door, and rode off before I could thank him. Never saw him again, but I remembered what it felt like. So maybe I'm just paying it forward." Clara felt her throat tighten. "What happened to them?" He looked into the fire. "Didn't make it." The silence that followed was gentle this time, not heavy. Just the quiet of two souls who had both lost too much, sitting under the same roof by chance. After a while, Samuel stood and poured 2 cups of coffee from the pot on the stove. He handed one to her. "Drink. You look like you could use it." The heat from the tin mug seeped into her palms. She took a sip and smiled faintly. "You make it strong." He chuckled, a sound that surprised her by how warm it was. "Strong's the only way it keeps a man awake through calving season." Outside, thunder rumbled faintly in the distance. The horses in the barn shifted restlessly. Samuel's gaze drifted to the window, the reflection of firelight flickering in his eyes. "You'll stay here tonight," he said. "No sense in walking back in the dark." "I can sleep in the barn," she offered quickly. "I don't want to trouble you." He shook his head. "Ain't right sending you out there in this cold. You can have the room at the end of the hall. Belong to my wife." She looked startled. "Are you sure?" He nodded once, his expression unreadable. "I'm sure." Clara followed him down the narrow hallway. The wooden floor creaked beneath her steps, and the scent of cedar and dust lingered in the air. When he opened the door, she saw a small room with faded curtains and a quilt folded neatly at the foot of the bed. A vase of dried flowers still sat on the windowsill, as if waiting for someone who'd just stepped out for a moment. "I haven't touched much in here," he said quietly. "Didn't have the heart to. But you'll be warmer here." Her voice trembled. "Thank you." He gave a small nod, then turned to leave. "There's water in the basin if you want to wash up. Breakfast's early. You'll hear me at the barn." As he started to close the door, she found herself blurting, "Samuel." He stopped, his hand on the frame. "Why me?" she asked softly. "There are folks in town who need help too." He looked at her for a long moment, the lantern light catching the faint scar on his jaw. "Because you asked," he said simply. Then he tipped his hat and walked away. When the door clicked shut, Clara sank onto the bed. Her fingers brushed over the quilt, the stitching uneven but careful. She imagined Samuel's wife sewing it, maybe humming to herself, maybe dreaming of the same kind of peace Clara now felt settling in her chest.